8 bodies lay in a neat, terrible line from the reinforced nursery door to the eastern stairwell. Enhanced Karathi Commandos engineered for speed and silence collapsed one after another like dominoes that had tipped towards something they never should have tried to touch. And behind that sealed door children were laughing while someone rolled dough on a countertop as if the universe outside hadn't just tried to rearrange itself. So if you've ever wondered what happens when the most dangerous person in the room is the one dusted in flour, subscribe to Coming the HFY, because this is only the beginning. The flour had been fresh that morning. Senior records clerk Halloran Voss remembered that clearly, because a fine white smudge had settled across the intake tablet when she signed her daily clearance form. Mara Petrov, Terran National, Civilian Classification C3, Embassy Child Care Specialist assigned to Ambassador Rethal's twin daughters, 6 years in service, spotless record, culinary hobby noted in personnel addendum. Halloran had processed her file personally when she transferred in 3 cycles ago. Terran female, mid-40s, soft voice, off-key singing documented in 2 light-hearted staff complaints filed by the ambassador's aides after bath-time serenades echoed down the hall. The twins, Sari and Mel, adored her. Sari liked star-shaped cookies. Mel insisted on circles because circles, as she once explained with solemn authority, don't have sharp corners. Mara smelled like soap and baked sugar. She wore the same pale blue apron every afternoon, a faded embroidered flower stitched near the hem, always lightly powdered white by the time Halloran passed the nursery corridor during shift rotation. He had categorized her under domestic staff, low priority access. That classification would haunt him later. The embassy security grid was state-of-the-art, layered energy barriers, biometric locks, for Karathi guards per quadrant. No one questioned why a nanny required only civilian clearance. She baked. She braided hair. She taught the twins to count in Terran standard. At 14:32 station time, the lockdown alarm shattered the calm. Red emergency lights washed the corridors. 8 unidentified Karathi breach specialists entered through the eastern transit spine, their movements synchronized and precise. Halloran watched from the records office as embassy guards were neutralized in 11 seconds. Stunned, not killed, professional efficiency. Energy barriers dropped sequentially, each collapse a silent exhale. The intruders advanced toward the nursery wing with terrifying purpose. Halloran reached for the emergency comm panel. Static swallowed every frequency. His eyelids fluttered out of sync, an old stress tell he had never mastered. He pulled up the nursery camera feed. Inside, Mara was at the counter, rolling dough while Mel pressed a cup into neat circular shapes and Sari carefully aligned star molds. A normal afternoon. Flour drifting in warm air. Then Mara looked up, not at the children, not at the door, at the camera. Directly into it. Halloran felt as if she could see him 2 floors below, frozen behind his console. She said something to the twins. Audio was jammed, but the girls reacted instantly. Calm. Rehearsed. They moved behind the heavy baking island that doubled as reinforced cover, just as they had during fire drills. Mel carried her circle of dough with her. Sari left her drawing, a crayon portrait of 3 figures holding hands, on the table. Mara untied her apron slowly, folded it once along the center seam, and hung it on the hook by the door with meticulous care, the gesture so deliberate it felt ceremonial. Then she opened the reinforced door and stepped into the corridor alone. Halloran's claws tightened on his desk. The Karathi operatives were 20 meters away and closing fast. 1 Terran civilian in a flour-dusted shirt stood between them and 2 children. Halloran wanted to look away. He didn't. Something ancient and instinctive told him to watch. Mara rolled her shoulders once, as though loosening stiff muscles, and smiled. Not brightly, not wildly, just a small, patient expression that did not belong in a war corridor. The next 90 seconds would replay in Halloran's mind for the rest of his career. The first operative reached her at full sprint. Karathi enhancements cut reaction time to near perfection, 300 milliseconds from stimulus to response. Mara moved first. Later, buried in Terran physiology archives Halrin would access through 6 denied requests and 1 unauthorized bypass, he would discover that average human reaction time hovered lower than Karathi assumptions, and that trained reflex conditioning could sharpen it further. In a narrow hallway, that margin was everything. Mara sidestepped, caught the operative's momentum with a pivot against the doorframe, and redirected him into the wall with controlled violence. 4 seconds. He dropped. The second and third came together, coordinated. She dropped low, sweeping one at the knee while driving an elbow upward into the other's throat, using their shared velocity against them. 7 seconds. Halrin's tactical overlay attempted to classify her techniques and returned fragmented matches, ancient Terran martial disciplines predating interstellar travel, systems designed when humans had fought in tight alleys and crowded streets. Operatives 4 through 6 attempted overwhelming force. Mara used the corridor corner, turning bodies into obstacles, movements economical, no wasted motion. 23 seconds later, 3 more lay unconscious. The 7th hesitated, a fatal delay. The 8th reached the nursery door, fingers brushing the handle. Mara caught his wrist from behind. The sound of the joint locking was soft, final. A controlled application of leverage. He collapsed. She held him 2 seconds longer, verifying unconsciousness, then released. 8 enhanced operatives lay immobilized, none fatally injured. Lethality, Halrin realized, had been available. She had chosen restraint. 40 seconds later, when the security override finally cycled and corridor access returned, Halrin ran, something he was not built for. He reached the nursery wing and stopped short. The hallway was quiet, almost serene, except for the line of bodies. Mara stood in the center, retrieving her apron from the hook and tying it around her waist with steady hands. Flour still dusted her sleeves. Her breathing was even, not forced, not ragged, simply normal. She glanced at Halrin. "The cookies will be done in about 10 minutes, she said gently, as if he had asked. Then she stepped back into the nursery and closed the reinforced door. Through it, he heard Mel asking if they could decorate with extra sugar and Sari complaining about waiting. Halrin remained in the corridor long after med teams removed the operatives. That evening he attempted to access Mara Petrov's full personnel file. 3 denials. He escalated to the Terran embassy liaison. The reply came swiftly and succinctly. File sealed under Terran Directive 7, retired special response personnel. The only visible data point was a medical evaluation from onboarding. Physical assessment, within civilian range. Combat training, blank. Not marked, none. Blank. The kind of blank that meant something had been erased without replacement. Halrin opened her classification entry. Domestic staff, low priority. He deleted low priority. Typed instead, clearance insufficient. It was the most honest report he had ever filed. Days later, the nursery was warm and peaceful again. Drawings taped at child height. Laughter echoing softly. Sari's newest picture showed a tall figure with brown hair and what might have been an apron, standing between 2 smaller Karathi shapes. Mara sat at the table helping the twins decorate star-shaped cookies, even Mel eating a star because her sister had made it. The apron hung slightly stretched at the shoulders, fabric faintly damp from washing. Outside, the corridor was spotless. No marks left behind except perhaps a lingering scent of industrial cleaner mingled faintly with flour. Halrin passed by, pausing just long enough to hear Mara singing off-key as she helped Mel measure sugar. He understood something then that no security protocol had ever taught him. Some species protect their young with walls and weapons, and some place a retired storm behind an apron and trust it to remain gentle until necessary. If you had been the one filing that report, what would you have written? Civilian. Threat. Or something harder to categorize. If this story reminded you that humanity's greatest strength isn't its technology but its choice of when to use its teeth, subscribe to Coming the HFY, because tomorrow's story might reveal what happened when Ambassador Ret Hal finally learned exactly who had been baking cookies with her daughters.